It's now my wonderful pleasure to introduce to you what's been a man has been considered quote a national treasure. I know him too well maybe to agree with that, but anyway, he is a wonderful friend of mine personally and professionally, and we go back for too many years. But he is now the director of the Smithsonian's National Museum for African American History and Culture. Has been in that position since 2005, and before then has been a leader in the museum field and in African American history. And one of the tasks that he's trying to do is to bring people together through history. To use history, as I was saying earlier, as a way to telling a story, an inclusive story that builds bridges. And I recommend to you his book called The Lost Dream Back, Essays on History, Race, and Museums. It's a remarkable account, I believe, written from the heart. And so I want to just call this to your attention because there's a lot in here I think that speaks to what we're striving for here at Drayton Hall. So I want to introduce to you now Lonnie Bunch, who's also on our board, to share with you his remarks. Thank you very much. There you go, man. There you go.
Thank you very much. I do love the notion national treasure just means you're old. That's really what it means. You know, what a grand and glorious morning this is. I have to tell you, let me begin by bringing you greetings from the Smithsonian Institution. We are so proud of the work that you're doing here at Drayton Hall. And I gotta be honest, I am so personally humbled and moved and honored to be a part of today's dedication of the African American Memorial. Because this is a special moment, and not just for Drayton Hall. This is a special moment for a nation still struggling to come to grips with its tortured racial past. In many ways, when I was thinking about coming here, a man who shaped my career came to mind. He was a man who spent his whole life on a plantation not too far from here, the old Friendfield Rice Plantation up in the Waccamaw Neck above Georgetown. And Mr. Johnson was in his 90s when I met him. And he used to talk to me about the importance of plantations. And he would tell me stories about slavery and being free on the plantation in the years after the war. But one of the things he said that I've never forgotten, he said, you know, the job of a historian is really important because your job is to help people to remember not just what they want, but what they need to remember. And those words, people need to remember, are crucial to help us understand what we're trying to do today. So today is special because it allows us, in fact, it encourages us to remember. To remember not out of nostalgia, but because these memories have meaning for us today. Mr. Johnson's words remind me of something James Baldwin wrote when he said, history does not merely refer or even principally refer to the past. On the contrary, the great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us, that we are unconsciously controlled by it, and that history is literally present in all that we do. So why did I come all the way down here from Washington, besides because the fact George told me I had to? Why is today so important? Well, first of all, I think it's important because it encourages us to combat one of the great dangers, and that is the danger of forgetting. Not too long ago, I received a letter from a man who was very upset that the Smithsonian was interested in African American history. He said that looking back just stirs up unpleasant memories. And then he wrote, and I quote him, after all, America's greatest strength is its ability to forget. He then went on to say historians like me should never be hired at the Smithsonian. Of course, he threw me off when he said, best wishes for your continued success. But, you know, but I do think he's right in one way. I do think you can tell a great deal about a people, about a nation, by what they deem important enough to remember. What countries build monuments to celebrate and what graces the walls of one's museums. But in many ways, we learn even more by what a country chooses to forget. This desire to omit difficult moments, disappointments, moments of evil is quite instructive, because in this country, it is often the essence of African American culture that is forgotten. It is often the story of the enslaved and their descendants that is shrouded by the myths of forgetfulness. But today, this dedication allows us to pierce this mist with the sunshine of remembering. Within this cemetery, we know the names of some, but many more names are known only to God. But today, we honor them all. We honor their sacrifice, their suffering, and their impact. But we also honor their joy. We honor their resiliency. We honor their lives. It's clear that we are all made better by the lives of the people who lived on this plantation. And in many ways, we are standing on their foundation. Because today is important because it gives us a chance not only to honor and remember, but to reposition our thinking about our enslaved ancestors. I have always been struck by how limited the knowledge is that most Americans have involving the impact and the importance of the institution of slavery, and their conflicted sense of what slavery meant to the enslaved. There are few opportunities, like what we have here today, to allow us to discuss, to learn, to wrestle openly with the impact, the legacy, and the continuing resonance of slavery. There is a need to help Americans understand that slavery matters, because so much of our struggle to find racial justice has been shaped by that institution. And so much of America's past, from politics to westward expansion, from economic growth to culture, was forged by the experience of slavery. And thanks to ceremonies like this one today, we also help people honor, in new ways, those who were enslaved. Honor because there are still people who are embarrassed by our slave ancestors. I, quite candidly, am in awe of them. I'm in awe of their ability to maintain their culture, to maintain their sense of family, to maintain their humor and their humanity, in spite the cruelties and the pain and loss that accompanied the institution of slavery. I am in awe of all the enslaved people that rest in this cemetery. I am amazed by their strength, by their faith in a better day, if not for them, then for their descendants. I only wish we were as strong as all those who went before us. I wish more people would realize that though our enslaved ancestors were bought, they were also brave. And though they were sold, they were also strong. This ceremony is important to me because it allows us to draw real inspiration, real guidance from the African American past. I would argue that there is nothing more inspirational than that story. I am so moved when I think of this culture, because who would not be moved by the oratory, the commitment to racial justice, or the ultimate sacrifice of a Martin Luther King? And who could not be moved by the beauty of the artistic creativity of Betty Saar? Or who could not be moved by the richness of the words of Langston Hughes? Or by the quiet bravery of a Rosa Parks and a John Lewis? Who could not be moved by the family that left Mississippi for the south side of Chicago? Or the woman who demanded that her name be kept on a voter registration list in the 1960s? But I'll tell you, I am also so moved by the people at rest in this sacred space. People who refuse to let the field strip them of their humanity. People who kept families together. People who believed in an America that no one could ever see. So today, we should be removed by these people because even though they are at rest, their actions, their lives tell us not to be rested. That our job is to struggle based on their lives for a fairer America, America that remembers not only their loss, but their contributions to who we are. In many ways, this ceremony today reminds us that African American culture is so vibrant and so vital because the black past is a wonderful but unforgiving mirror, a mirror that forces us to remember this nation's promises and its ideals. It's a mirror that holds us all accountable. It's a mirror that makes those who are often invisible more visible and gives voice to the many who are often overlooked. Today's program ensures that those African Americans who labored, who died, who struggled here will be visible and their voices will be heard. We may leave them rest, but we will leave here remembering. And finally, let me thank George McDaniel because I want you to know how important Drayton Hall is to all of us. George is somebody who you know whose scholarship and career has shaped the lives of so many of us, including me. But today is important because of what it means to those who care about America's culture. Robert Kennedy once spoke about the power that comes from a ripple of hope. Well, at Drayton Hall, you have created a ripple of remembering that is helping to change how and what America remembers. Your work here, as evidenced by this careful handling of this sacred space and the honoring of our memories, is noted nationally and greatly appreciated by those of us who work in places like the Smithsonian. This site continues to pioneer in helping plantations tell a fuller, more complex, and ultimately more satisfying history. Often sites like Drayton Hall marginalize the interpretation of the enslaved, but you demonstrate that illuminating all the dark corners of the past makes us all better. So let me conclude by reminding us that there is nothing more powerful than a people, than a community, than a nation that is steeped in its history. And there are few things as noble as honoring all of our ancestors by remembering the known, the unknown, the black, the white, the slave, and the free. So thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of this ceremony that honors our ancestors, that helps us all remember. Because today, I know as sure as I'm standing here, that our ancestors are smiling. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lonnie. A national treasure indeed. A national treasure indeed. There's so many phrases to remember, and I'm glad we're having this documented, because as we think about those powerful words that he had that he called on all of us to reflect upon and to work and to act on, that ripple effect of remembering. And I think that's what we to continue to tell the story, to pass it on. Very, very powerful.